do recognize some faces that are probably sitting in on your first presentation. Some of you have seen these before, but let me just explain a bit what we do. Used to be part of our one of our internships. We have 2 internships. We pulled out of that the piece where a student does a project. One, so they get more job shadowing hours on the internship and more real world experience there, but also so they can focus more purposefully on a particular project. Students have to do a minimum of a 1-hour project. They also have options for 2 or 3 credit hour projects depending on what they need for credits for graduation, but also based on the kind of project they're interested in. We try and pick projects of one of 2 types. Sometimes we pick a project that fits a student's particular area of interest, and maybe it's a good step towards a career that they're interested in. Sometimes we pick a project with the student specifically trying to expand their exposure. So they'll do a project that's different from something that they've ever done before. And so Matt's got a project. He's going to tell you about the project and show you what he has to show you. And what we've asked of you, Mrs. Todd and I evaluate a number of things with respect to the course and the final grade in the course, but today each of you have been asked to fill out an evaluation on the presentation. And so whatever you could give Matt in the form of feedback on his presentation would be helpful and appreciated. Thank you for coming to support Matt.
My name is Matt Mason, and I'd like to thank all of you guys for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come here and watch my presentation. My presentation was about the Linode server, and just to cover some basics, what the Linode server is it's basically a cloud server that our department pays a monthly subscription for. So basically we rent the hardware from another company. If you've ever heard of like Google Platform, Amazon Web Services, stuff like that, it's pretty similar, just a smaller company. So the actual machine's actually located in Atlanta, Georgia, but we're able to connect to our server using the internet whenever we want, and we can customize it and have it serve whatever purpose we need. So there's the Linode logo there. So the thing that we the main thing that we use our Linode server for is our CIS HLG website. There's a picture of it right there. The main thing inside of that we use is the internship option, which is right there. And then once you go in there, you can sign in and you have your own profile where you keep track of your own logs. We use this for our internship 1, 2, and senior project classes to keep track of hours. It really just helps us out, like being able to log our hours wherever we are. Like if we have connection to the internet, we don't have to carry around a flash drive or submit our hours in all kinds of different file formats like Word or Excel, stuff like that. So just some of the basics of it. After you sign in, like you see Matthew Maple log, and then you tell it what kind of log you're submitting, so like internship 1, and then you tell it the date and the hours, and then you give a brief little description. You can see a couple of my logs from internship 1 there as examples. So the goals of my project were to try to update our Linode server. Right now it's running on Ubuntu 14.04, and I wanted to update it to Ubuntu 16.04. And so in order to do this, Mrs. Todd and I were pretty sure when we discussed that if we were to update it, we would probably break the website the way it is right now. And we definitely didn't want to have any downtime, especially in the middle and towards the end of the semester while people are trying to submit their logs and keep track of stuff. So the goal for me was to create a test environment where I would use a backup of our Linode server and create a local simulated Linode server in our lab that we could run updates on and make sure, whenever things broke, we could try to fix them before, actually having downtime on our real website. So the first goal would be, to get a backup file down from our Linode and then get a test machine up and running. And then from there, I could practice running the updates on there. And then any kind of extra steps that I would have to do, I could copy those on the actual live Linode server and not have any downtime. So the first step of this project, I got a server, as you can see there, and I really didn't know anything about this server. It was donated to our department. All I knew about it is that it had a sticky note on it that said wiped. So the first thing I did was open it up and just kind of see what kind of hardware I was working with. I didn't have a whole lot of server experience walking into this course, But luckily, server hardware and PC hardware are pretty similar, which I do have some experience with, so that helped me out quite a bit. So after I had the hardware inside of it set up the way that I wanted, I decided to pick out an operating system because, like I said, it was wiped, so the hard drives were clean, there was nothing on it. And the operating system that I decided to choose was ESXi, which is a hypervisor developed by VMware for deploying and serving virtual machines. If you don't know what a hypervisor is, it's basically a piece of software that allows you to create virtual machines inside of normal machines. So like, even though I only have one server, I could have as many virtual machines as I wanted inside of this one server. So I could have multiple, you know, up to as many as I wanted really, but I really only needed 3 virtual machines. But so yeah, I chose VMware just because I was able to, like the first thing that I would need to do is pull down a image, and in order to do that, I didn't want to set up a specific machine just for that. And then the next step would be to set up another machine using the Linode file that I pulled down, and just going through all that steps was a lot easier by doing it virtually. So like I said, before I get ahead of myself, I needed to set up a virtual machine to pull the original Linode backup image down onto. I chose Ubuntu for this just because our Linode server is already running on Ubuntu, and when talking from computer to computer, it's a lot easier if they're the same operating system, so I didn't have to worry about any cross-platform stuff by choosing Ubuntu. And then after that, I really needed to figure out how to get an image file down from our Linode server into our lab. And so to do this, we put in a support ticket to Linode, and they set us up with this guide on how to get a file down. And basically, we would have a file from everything that's on our Linode, but in a file form, like in our lab, that I could work with. So here I just kind of have a really simplified diagram of my process. So once I was able to walk through their guide, I had a file of our Linode server. So everything that was on our Linode server, I now had in a 50 gigabyte sized file on my Ubuntu virtual machine. And then from there, the goal was to get it onto my Windows 10 physical machine that I have in the lab. And to do that, I use FileZilla. And then from Windows 10, I'll be able to connect to my VMware ESXi server that I had configured. And then I could store that file in the data store on it and try to get that into a virtual machine. So that was kind of my process, the intended process anyway. Step 3 is where everything kind of took a turn for the worse. This was definitely the hardest part of the project. So every time I did get it onto the ESXi server, and every time I would try to start a virtual machine off of the Linode file, all I got was a blank screen and like a blinking cursor, like every single time. So I thought maybe it had something to do with VMware ESXi, so I tried to do it in Windows version of the hypervisor called Hyper-V, and I got the same thing. Like no error message or anything, just a blank screen with a blinking cursor. So I really had nothing really to go by as far as troubleshooting this problem. So the main thing that I saw as a concern was the file that I downloaded was called a .image file or .img. And most of the time, bootable files are called .iso, like .iso. So after doing a little bit of research, I found that there are several different softwares out there that I could try to use to convert my .image file into a .iso file. The first one that I tried here was PowerISO. The main problem with it was that it was free, but in order to get more than a 700 megabyte file converted, I would have to pay. So I didn't really want to do that, so I switched off to another software called ImageBurn. And it did accept the 50 gigabyte file, but it didn't, like whenever I converted it, I had to wait through the long process of converting a 50 gigabyte file. And whenever I did, it was still a 50 gigabyte file, and it had just changed it from .image to .iso. So I wasn't too hopeful because the file size didn't change or anything, so I assumed it didn't really do too much. But I tried it anyway, and again, I just got a blank screen with a blinking cursor. And another thing to consider in this project is every single time I either tried to convert it or transfer the file from one place to another, it was a 50 gigabyte file. So that did take up quite a bit of time trying to wait for all that to happen. But anyway, in the third software that I tried was called Ini2ISO. And this one actually did compress the file down to a 10 gigabyte size file, but it still had the same blank screen with the blinking cursor. Like, I was not sure what was going on. I had tried everything. I was so desperate that I went into File Explorer and tried to just change it from .image to .iso by renaming it, just because like we had consulted with a couple of people around campus and a couple of the alumni, and they said, oh yeah, it should be the same thing. Well, it wasn't exactly the same thing. So that also did not work. And again, with working with the 50 gigabyte file, every time I tried a new step, I wanted to make sure that I kept my original Linode.image file in contact, so I'd have to copy a new file and rename it something different. So I ended up with like 5 or 6 different 50 gigabyte files on my hard drive, which was kind of a pain. But so after all that not working, I was kind of nervous about maybe the file that I pulled down was corrupt. In order to check this out, after a little bit of research, I found that I could mount the file. And basically all mounting the file is you're just tricking the machine into thinking that you're putting in some kind of external like storage device, like a USB or a CD. So basically, as you can see from my command here, I had to make a new directory or a folder and mount the Linode.image file to the new folder. And by doing that, I was able to actually get in and see these are all the same files that are on our Linode. So by seeing all the same files on our Linode on this file that I pulled down from Linode, I was pretty sure that the file was not corrupt. Just because if everything's there, you know, nothing's showing up any red flags, like no files missing, no extra files there. So I was really kind of out of options. And then I started thinking, you know, Linode is the one who, the company Linode is the one who gave me this guide on how to get this image file. So maybe if I contact them again through support, maybe they can assist me a little bit. And this is the message I got back from them. You can read it if you want. But basically the important part here is that if you plan to boot this image on something other than a Linode, you will need to supply a kernel. So to simplify that a little bit, either we would have to use our Linode.image file and pay for another subscription to Linode to have a new machine on Linode's, you know, with their services, and we would have to pay to have a test environment running, or I would have to supply a kernel, which is something that is kind of out of my scope, something that I've never really worked with. A kernel is like the most basic part of an operating system, which I've, again, really never worked with. So I was kind of nearing the end of my hours and like the semester, so I didn't really have a whole lot of time to try to learn what a kernel was, or exactly, you know, how a kernel worked. So I thought maybe I could improvise, and I thought maybe if I couldn't get a perfect copy of our Linode server to work exactly the same way that the Linode server actually worked, maybe I could get just the websites, the website files, the accounts, stuff like that, and I could at least get a somewhat simulated version onto a virtual machine, and then we could run updates on it. And even if it's not exactly perfect, I could at least somewhat simulate it. So whenever I tried this, I tried copying the index.html file over from the mounted file into my actual virtual machine. And the problem with this is, like, that's the normal website where a web server tells a user to go, like, whenever they try to hit your website. But our Linode server is actually configured in cake.php, which does not use the index.html file. So whenever I pulled that file out of the mounted file and into my virtual machine, all it gave us was the default "this website works" page that you normally get. So I have never worked with cake.php, and like I just said, I was kind of nearing the end of my project, and I really didn't have time to learn a framework or try to decipher somebody else's code. So at this point in the project, I was kind of on to Hail Mary time. Like, I decided that if I could, we weren't for sure that if I ran the update on the live Linode server, that it would break everything. So I decided to try and run the updates on the live Linode server, and I say Hail Mary, but it wasn't exactly like a chuck and pray kind of play. Like earlier in the semester, around the end of March, we had a support ticket from Linode where we had a terms of service violation, and they detected DOS activity on our server. And basically that just means they detected some malicious activity coming from our server. So they completely shut it down, network going to and from the server. They shut it off, and we weren't able to upload or download any files back from our Linode. And to take care of that, I had to contact them through the support again, and they sent us a guide on how to fix it and the steps to undoing what they thought we had done. And I ended up having to revert the server back to a backup file that we had from 3 weeks prior. So unfortunately, we did lose everything on the Linode server from 3 weeks, but we at least got rid of the malicious activity that had popped up. So that was good. And basically the moral of that story is that if my updates don't work, I can revert it back to the day before. So I made sure to have Mrs. Todd email our entire department and say, hey, don't upload anything on Thursday night because I'm going to be trying this on Friday, and it's very possible that you lose all your files if you do anything on Thursday night. So yeah, just working with a live environment is definitely something that I didn't want to try to do just because of how fragile it could be. And here you have the before I ran the update, we have the normal website, and here's the after. Just some lines of code because it did break our cake PHP framework. So I did have to revert it back, but I did confirm our belief that running the update straight up would break our server, and I was able to fix that. So I did get that accomplished. And then whenever I reverted back, it's really hard to see, but on this left side on before, it says that there are 107 packages that can be updated and 93 updates that are security updates. So with that many security updates, it's kind of not too hard to believe that we found some malicious activity coming from our server. And I was able to take care of those, as you can see over here. There are no more updates, so I did take care of that. And so in conclusion, the experience that I gained was a lot of experience like hands-on with the server. That's something I would have never gotten without this project. And I'm very glad that I was able to get that from this project, just working with that server and ESXi. And then I also gained experience with EXSI with that operating system and the virtual machines and working with virtual machines in it. I gained a lot of experience with the Linux command line because our Linode server and my virtual machine were both in the Linux command line. So even though I'm not a command line person, I was exposed to it for the duration of this project. I learned about image files and what they can and can't do. I also learned the importance of backups just because they saved my bacon several times throughout this project. And then I gained some real world experience managing a cloud server just with contacting with the Linode support back and forth, especially with the terms of service violation. I feel like that's something that could definitely happen in a real world environment and having to troubleshoot that with a company. So where to go from here? Based on what the Linode support said, the next step would either be to pay for a new Linode server and let it serve as a test environment, or we could start from scratch and develop a new website with the same functionality. My personal opinion is that starting from scratch would probably be quite a bit easier. And then if we could start from scratch and not use any kind of frameworks, just use some like normal HTML and JavaScript stuff that we teach in our courses already. That way more than one person can work on it, because like when you use a framework, it really narrows down who knows the framework and who can actually work on it and troubleshoot it. So if we could just start from scratch, I feel like that'd probably be the better option for us. And our current version of Ubuntu is 14.04.5, which support and security updates for that are going to end in April 2019, so just under a year. So this is kind of a problem that does need to be taken care of, and hopefully my work over this last semester has gotten us some big strides towards fixing that. And that's all I got.
Are there any questions?
Are there any questions?
So when you had the malicious activity that they were able to discover, that wasn't from anything you had that you did, right? That was from an exterior.
Yeah, on the Linode website, there are graphs that show like the network activity, and I confirmed that all of my activity were on different dates from when there were giant spikes in the network activity. So even though I was downloading 50 gigabyte files at a time while trying, it wasn't me that was
So it's an external hacker.
that was setting off an alarm. Yeah.
Yeah, just to help clarify that, I'm not sure any of us exactly know, but when you're working with live servers, you're subject to any and everyone in the world who or a bot or anything that could land there. And we already know that we try to be careful, but we have probably not as secure a server as somebody who spends all their time in that field. So we're just, we don't really know why. Somebody landed something or a web page got a file attached or something. We're not really sure. Anybody else have some questions?
What would be a practical application for your project?
Like, oh, well, see, like if a business, if, you know, it's kind of practical as it is, like working with the HLD's department, or the CIS department website, you really don't want to have downtime. And so a lot of people will have like a test environment. That way they can work without risking downtime on a real, like, live thing. Because like, imagine if like Amazon went down even for a couple of minutes, that's probably millions of dollars that they would be losing for it being down even a couple of minutes. So a real live application would be creating a test environment for basically any company that kind of need it.
We do use our Linode server for more than just logs too.
Right, we have a place where we can upload files and stuff to it as well.
And how long have you guys used Linode? Is that something like further back than him?
Oh,
or-
yes. We've had it for about 7 years,
Okay.
7 or 8.
And it ends next year.
Well, that version, Linode doesn't end, just the software that's on that. And if we don't fix this web problem, we're gonna crash and everything we've had is just gonna be, we'll just start brand new.
It
We're
has
trying-
to be updated by 2019.
Right, it doesn't mean we
has to
can't
be.
use Linode, it means we can't use the server the way it is.
Sure.
So we're trying to figure out how we can fix that without taking everything down. And the other thing you need to know about Linode, while we've had the server for about 7 years, every year we have different students do different things on it. That's part of why the website is not so beautiful. We just have somebody who's learning, build something. And so every year we have new people putting input into this, and that could be also why we had security breach of some sort. You know, you just have a lot of hands in the pot.
Got a question.
Yep.
It's about the kernel. I was talking to you, it was during the semester. I thought you said that they wouldn't give you the kernel, so they would give you the kernel, but you just didn't want to, you didn't want to use it on another.
We'll see that they'll only give us the kernel if we start up another Linode machine. So they're
Yeah,
technically
so-
not giving us the kernel, they're letting us use their kernel to boot our file
Yeah, yeah,
too.
yeah.
So our options were either to do that and have to pay for a separate Linode server and have another monthly subscription fee, or we could supply our own kernel like he said, but that's something that's kind of out of our scope, my scope.
You might say Linode's kernel is kind of like their secret sauce. For, you know, Coke's not going to give you their recipe, and Linode's not going to give you their kernel.
Yeah, so like real life terms, it's like the Krabby Patty secret formula. But not just gonna leave it out, you know.
I understand that.
That's real life.
Speaking our language.
It's a great analogy.
Is this a project, not this particular project, but is this a experience something that all CIS students should go through?
I would say so. It was probably about as close to real life as you can get, like just as far as having a project where it's 100% dependent on you and your ability to do it.
And learning to use tech support
And do research for yourself without, you know, having it handed to you or.
You try to take it back to the side with your goals.
You may have to make it larger. So are you disappointed you were not successful by your definition?
I was pretty disappointed, yeah. At least, like I said, I tried to improvise at one point and just, if I couldn't get a perfect replica, I really wanted to at least get something that we could work on. But just the tangled mess of Cake PHP was too much for me to decipher in the amount of time that I had to decipher it.
and the amount of time you on a 1, 2, or 3 credit hour.
Too.
So you had 80 hours.
Yeah. And actually, whenever we originally talked about the project, it was discussed as 120 credit hour, but I just couldn't fit it into my schedule as far as like trying to work around different things, other classes and work.
Did you reach 80 hours?
I did reach 80 hours. I was around 81 hours, and that's with the server going down and losing 3 weeks of data, which I was not able to replace all of my logs that I lost, but I did replace most of them. So realistically, it's probably around 85, 90, but what I have logged is 81 hours.
Perils of real life.
81 hours in a pretty short amount of time. There were some points we couldn't even do anything.
Yeah, there were several parts of the project where, well, just, like I said, working with a 50 gigabyte file in general, like I didn't want to count downloading a 50 gigabyte file as me working, because really I was just hitting a button and letting it go. So like several times, like downloading the project or trying to run those converters, I would just like download and install the software, kind of try to learn it real quick, and then I would hit download, and then I would usually leave for the night and then come back the next morning and see what happened. That way I wasn't counting waiting around for software to work as me working, because I didn't feel like that was,
You'll lose a whole day off of that.
yeah, I didn't feel like that was fair to count that as my progress.
Yeah, and now at the end of the project, you know, we have to create projects and come up with plans and things we don't always know the end solution to. That's one of the fun things about our job, is we don't even know how, but we've just about decided that this approach is not even gonna be doable. Enough people that we've asked, I don't even think it's gonna work the way we had hoped it would. So we're probably just gonna have to start a test environment in the lab and build it from bottom up. But he did tell you some things that he was successful to help us with in the lab. Thank them. You wanna tell them thanks for coming?
Thank you guys for coming.
All right. Well, thank you for coming. Before everybody gets up and leaves, let's give him a hand. It's a little unusual to have special guests from off campus. We always invite and encourage students to do so, but we have a couple here from off campus. Matt, would you like to introduce who's here with you today?
Yeah, my mom and dad are back there, and if you want to stick around and talk to them, and I'm sure they have some embarrassing stories.
Would
they
you
can
like,
tell you.
and would they happen to have names?
Yeah, my mom's name is Jill, and then my dad's name is David.
And just for their sake, if we could go around the table and just say who we are and what our connection to Matt is. Dr. Nelson, would you start on that end?
Yeah, Lonnie Nelson, I'm one of the professors.
I'm Courtney Jeans. I work down the hall from where he's interning, and I was his third and fourth grade
Teacher.
and his third
So
grade
she has
teacher.
stories as well.
And his third grade teacher.
And
as
she's
well.
enjoyed telling me a few too.
I have been very good about only showing him the picture.
The classroom picture, I saw it.
I have not like taken it around campus or anything like
She did such a
that.
bad job with Matt. Move on.
Darla Power, he works in our office.
Kayla McBride, and he works in our office.
Julie, I'll be a professor in education office, and Matt helps me a lot with Canvas. So I was just like, will you please do this? And he helps me, so.
Justin Dixon, Matt interned in our office at Peer Services, and I had a couple classes with him, so.
Miles Mullen and we're a SpongeBob SquarePants fan club together.
That's accurate.
Michelle Todd is academic advisor and professor.
Karen Chaputis, Dr. Allen's administrative assistant. I have a connection to you. I know your parents.
Yes, I was just saying, you know, we know Dalton.
Oh, yeah, I'm Dalton Hawkinson. You might have met me a couple times.
Lived at our house on the weekends, all
Yeah.
day.
Best friends with Matt since first, second grade, I don't know, something like that, a long time.
And I'm doing lip, I'm just another CIS major.
No friend of Matt's?
No.
Oh,
No,
no.
okay.
I'm just here. No.
Shut up.
He thought there was snacks.
Disappointed.
And then also, Matthew interned at the bank I work at. I'm the chief information officer, and he interned under Nathan Gooding, who's one of my employees.
Right, I would say they both handily wore their appropriate uniform shirts. She works at Home Bank and he is the owner of Hometown Signs. You may recognize those businesses from the area, so. And we appreciate you helping get him placed in the bank. And it was a good experience too. Well, if you'd give feedback for Matt, of course you can just mark the boxes, but when you write a couple of comments for him, that's more meaningful feedback. You do that and leave that with us. We appreciate it. We'll let him see those.